Hello people, welcome back to the channel, and in this one I'm going to be showing you a video by QuoteTube. It is a video that I feel is very important for any man to listen to and understand, and I think the key message from my channel is to really not just expose women's nature, but to just show you it is what it is, and it's not what you've been taught what it is. So you've been taught the Disney fairy tale where man and woman fall in love and it's happily ever after. Well, look, listen, women love attention and they love men to chase them, but they don't respect the men. So they men are the men that end up marrying the women. And this is why the women end up cheating and having affairs and, whatever. All the crazy chaos that comes with the betrayal that that will eventually do to simps, men who chase women. So the women love it, but they don't respect it. But the difference is, they respect men who don't get emotional for them. Men who just literally blow their minds and give them everything they want in their fantasy. That's what women really respect. So that's why that will always happen. Cheating and women just literally doing anything for men that send them crazy. And that is why I feel like men need to understand that the chances of you meeting a woman, even if you are a good looking guy, women are that emotional that trying to put time and effort into them and trying to keep them and have a relationship with them is nigh on impossible in this modern day. Just simply because women, their nature is hypergamy. And that is the reality, and monkey branching and always looking for the stronger man. That is how, it's not that they're not choosing to do that. They are programmed to do that. And the times that we're living in, social media, the extra attention, the validation, more opportunities, they don't need to depend on men as much. It means that hypergamy, it's a breeding ground for hypergamy to go insane. And that's what we're witnessing. So let's just watch this video, and I think it really will give you a good detailed idea of a woman's nature. So let's watch the video. Make sure the volume's good and it's good.
Truths that don't just hurt. They tear the soul apart. Truths that once revealed offer no way back. Truths that destroy the fantasies you grew up with. Those you were taught to call love. But it is precisely those truths that have the power to rip you from the lie, to shatter the spell that kept you walking through life half asleep. And among all of them, there's one that most men refuse to face. Women don't love the way you love. They never have. And as long as you don't understand this, you'll remain trapped in a cycle of unreciprocated giving, blind idealization, and repeated pain. You're not suffering because of her. You're suffering because you're clinging to a mental construction that was never real. What hurts is the fantasy, not the person. What crushes you is realizing that everything you thought was mutual was, in fact, just a projection. Schopenhauer, the philosopher many called a pessimist, was one of the few who dared to say it bluntly. He dismantled the romantic ideal with a pen that never asked permission to offend. According to him, what we call romantic love is nothing more than a trick of the species. A mechanism carefully designed to keep the man distracted, committed, devoted, but never truly reciprocated in the way he hopes, what you call a soulmate. She might call stability what you see as eternal. She may view as merely functional, and not because she's evil, because she's programmed just as you are, but from a different logic. And that mismatch between your idealism and her biology is the root of your suffering. This isn't about blaming. It's not about hating. It's about seeing, about opening your eyes to a pattern that repeats itself in the lives of millions of men who gave everything and received only silence. Not because they weren't enough, but because they never understood the rules of the game. A game where you offer your soul expecting eternity, while she only responds to a silent, ancient, efficient impulse. And when that impulse stops activating, you stop mattering. Schopenhauer didn't speak out of resentment. He spoke out of clarity. What he saw in the dynamic between man and woman was a system of unconscious forces where romantic love is merely decorative surface. Behind every promise of forever, behind every gesture you interpret as deep connection. A biological logic is at work, one that doesn't ask for permission, and that logic is cold, strategic, functional for her. Love is not a sacred destination. It's a means, an instrument of selection while you believe you're living an epic story of souls finding one another. She often, without conscious awareness, is evaluating whether you meet her current needs. Status, security, provision, protection, not out of malice, but by design. Her instinct is not calibrated.
So, do you see that the saying I believe is true, that men look for love and women look for business or resources or the security? They're not looking for a genuine connection with a man. It's what can you provide her? How can you benefit her life? How can she get a better life? And as soon as a man that comes along, if you don't keep ticking all her boxes and you don't maintain ticking all her boxes to keep all her emotions in check, as soon as one starts to lack, the other starts to lack, and there's a disconnect between you, she will likely just move on. Because that's the way women work. If she meets a guy that ticks more of the boxes than you do, which is easy to happen if, say, you're 3 years deep in a relationship with a woman, obviously if she meets a new guy and he gives her all the new guy talk and gets her butterflies going, that's hard to compete with when you're 3 years into a relationship and maybe you're hitting a rocky patch. But this is when women will start to plan their exit, or whenever they feel like you do not meet their standards. They will start planning their exit, whether they cause an argument with you or, they eventually find a way to end it. And it usually, it doesn't end pretty. And really, you just have to, basically, it's like, yeah, like women's nature is just that if you don't tick all her boxes, she's gone. It's just that simple. And so it's like a constant job to, day by day, keep on top of this woman and keep her happy, and make sure that she's all of her feelings are in check. But then where do you find the balance? If you're too nice to her, it puts her off. If you're too distant in a relationship, then she'll start to say you're neglecting her. So how do you really win with a woman? Like, really, in the long run, just think about it. When you listen to what they're saying in this video, and then what I'm saying, and what you know yourself, just look at the modern times.
Braided to idealize, but to survive, and when someone appears who represents a better option on that silent board, her body knows before her mind does, the spark dies, and you're left confused thinking love disappeared out of nowhere, but love was never what you thought it was. That disconnection you can't explain logically, that sudden coldness you don't know the origin of. It's not betrayal in the way you understand it. It's biological adaptation. It's evolution. You're still anchored to the narrative you were sold. If you love purely, you'll be loved in return. But she doesn't respond to purity, she responds to functionality. And if you stop being useful in that emotional, economic, or social structure, you stop being chosen, you stop being needed. The mistake isn't in her for changing direction, the mistake is in you. For not realizing you were playing an emotional game with biological rules, for continuing to give your soul to a system that only needed a part of you for a limited time. You placed your heart where only presence was required in. You gave eternity where only a temporary advantage was expected, and while you still believed in the story, she was already looking toward another horizon, not out of cruelty, but because her instinct had stopped choosing you.
And just think about this. It's an analogy that I can't remember where I heard it, but it really does make sense when you think about why women's nature is like this. Obviously, it's primal. But if you think over how many years where villages were pillaged and attacked, maybe by Vikings or whatever, over just ions of time, where women would be living happily with their in their village, and the next thing you know, these barbarians come in, attack it, kill all the men, and take the women. So if that's a cycle of history that's went on for years and years and years, women's nature will at some point adapt to that, and that they will be programmed to be hypergamous for survival. You see, and that's the bottom line. And so, if you think about it in that way, it does make sense why they're like that. Is it cruel in the short term? Yes, but ultimately it is survival. So, if you think about what I just said, women have been programmed to where they've had to have no choice but to move on to better men, because the men that kill their men are the men that are more dominant and are in control of them now. You see, and that is what they are pretty much conditioned to live like. You know, if you think about it. And obviously nature's got its own programming as well, which pretty much prepares them for that way, that this life, you know. Is it hand in hand? But you know what I'm saying? It's quite crazy when you look deep into it.
Since childhood, we'd been programmed with a powerful and dangerous idea that finding the right woman would give our entire existence, meaning that she would be the end of the road, the reward, the cure for our loneliness, the refuge where we could finally rest from the world. They told us that if we loved deeply enough, if we were loyal, noble, and persistent, we would receive equally pure love in return, that being good men was enough, that devotion was sacred, that sacrifice was love. But no one told us she wasn't dreaming the same dream. No one warned us that her logic does not respond to romantic depth, but to instinctual need. While you were pouring yourself into building something eternal, she might have just been crossing a bridge. You laid the foundations of a castle in her honor, unaware that she was only looking for a temporary shelter. The total devotion you offered wasn't seen as an act of greatness. It was often perceived as a sign of weakness, because to the female instinct, security isn't found in devotion but in strength. And if your love makes you lose your center, your power, your dignity, then you become less desirable, less useful, less necessary. Men believe the more they give, the more they will be loved. But they fail to see that unconditional giving often communicates only one thing: that they're willing to abandon themselves, and that, far from inspiring, connection breeds disinterest, because in this hidden game of biology and selection, value is not in how much you sacrifice, it's in how much you can lead without losing yourself, without crawling, without disappearing. And when she leaves, when silence replaces promises, the man doesn't just lose a woman. He loses a part of himself, because he made that story his identity, because he believed his worth was tied to being chosen. But Schopenhauer said it without flinching: what you feel as eternal love may be for her just an episode. You confuse it with destiny, when for her it was just circumstance. The most devastating moment is not when she leaves, it's when you, standing in front of the mirror, realize that everything you gave didn't change a thing. That your messages, your gestures, your sacrifices didn't mean the same to her. That while you were building an emotional home, she was constructing an unconscious survival strategy. And that abyss of meaning is what breaks you, because you thought you both loved from the same place, from the same longing for transcendent connection. But no, you gave your soul.
So really, it's men who are programmed to love on a bonding level, whereas women are really more primal when it comes to interactions between man and woman. They go off dopamine hits, which you get from the kissing, the eloping or whatever, making love, well, whatever you want to call it, the breeding or having children, and whatever it is that makes them happy. But if you can't provide that to a woman, then it doesn't matter, who you are. You need to provide this primal need for women. Whereas men, it is primal, but I believe men are more capable of actually falling deeply in love and getting connected to a woman. Because women are not really programmed for that, or that would be going against their nature, which is to find the strongest man and continually fight for survival. You see, so if she was to just stick with one man, that's not how her nature is set up. It's quite crazy.
Evaluated conditions, and there you are, shattered, pleading with your heart for something she had already resolved with her instinct. There's no going back, no speech. Can reignite a flame that only burned because you served a function. When you're no longer useful, you're no longer desired, and while you beg, she no longer feels. While you replay memories, she's already projecting herself toward what's next. Her instinctive radar isn't waiting for your understanding, it just operates. And here comes the cruelest part. The more you beg, the more you dissolve. The harder you try to prove you're worth it, the less you're worth in her eyes, because the man who gives everything without boundaries, without demands, without limits, ends up as an emotional, disposable object. Not because she planned it that way, but because instinct doesn't reward powerless giving, it rewards dominance, direction, self-control. And when you lose yourself in the desperation to get her back, you lose the one thing that once made you valuable, your dignity. You become the echo of an illusion that never understood the ground it was playing on. Schopenhauer warned us without embellishment, the man who places a woman at the center of his existence becomes a slave, not to her, but to the image he projected onto her. And when that image shatters, there's nothing solid left to rebuild from, only ruins, only silence. But within that devastation, there is a door, and the key isn't in her, it's in you. The key is this: I allowed it, not as an act of guilt, but as a point of origin. If you allowed the idealization, the blind devotion, the self-abandonment, then you can also allow your reconstruction. You can stop looking outward toward her and begin to look inward.
And so if you think about it, it makes sense that men are programmed to fall in love with women and get attached to women, because at a fundamental level, men are made to protect women. So that would make sense why men act that way. And then women are looking for protection from men. So it makes sense as to why they are programmed that way. But I think just in the modern times of technology and the amount of attention women can get, they can get flown anywhere across the world, communicate with men across the world, that it means that that instinct has got so many options that it's hard for a woman to stay in one relationship, because the opportunities that our primal desires or the opportunities that are available to our primal desires and needs is literally endless. So that's why we're seeing such crazy times in dating right now, where nobody can seem to stick together, everybody's single, men and women are disconnecting on a relationship level, because the hypergamy and monkey branching that's been created through the modern times in women is making it really impossible for women to be happy and settle in one relationship. That's the way I see it.
Not as a man who needs to be loved to feel complete, but as one who finally understands his own worth beyond any external validation. That doesn't mean becoming cold or hateful or closed off to love. It means waking up, seeing clearly, understanding that a woman is neither a goddess nor a demon, but a being with a different logic. That her primary impulse is to select, evaluate, and move forward according to what her biology dictates, not your idealism. And now that you are aware of this, you have the power to choose who you share your energy with, because you are no longer trying to be chosen. You are choosing when you stop idealizing something stronger than illusion. Is born clarity.
But he, like, I want to say that he said women are not evil or a demon or whatever. I have to disagree in a sense that the way their nature's set up, it means that you can technically call them evil because they're so ruthless and selfish, in the way that they're programmed to literally only think about themselves and maybe their children, but they do not think about men. That is not their role. They are looking for men to care about them and think about them. You see, yeah. So I think you could class women as evil. For sure. That's just my opinion. And whether you can say it's an intentional or not, that's different. Obviously, going by their primal nature, you could say, well, maybe it's not intentional, but still, the way that they do carry themselves and the things that they do, the way they do things, it is evil, really.
Clarity that tells you your worth isn't measured by how much you give or how unconditionally you love, but by how loyal you remain to yourself, even in the face of desire. And that clarity changes you. It returns the dignity you had placed in her hands. You become selective, not from arrogance, but from deep respect for your essence. Schopenhauer didn't want men to become cynics. He wanted them to stop suffering from playing a game whose rules they didn't understand. He wanted them to awaken to stop seeking transcendence in others that can only be built from within. To stop sacrificing their purpose for a promise that was never made from the same place. Because when the veil drops, when the illusion dies, something powerful is born. The man who doesn't beg for love, who doesn't plead to be seen, who doesn't trade his soul for scraps of affection. The man who chooses himself every single day, and that is the only man who is truly free.
Yep, so there you have it. I mean, I think that is about as good a description of women's nature as you can really need to really get the point that women are not programmed to fall in love and stick with one man by nature. Like I said, back in the Viking times, that wasn't a thing. One woman would average probably go through 3 different armies or 5 different armies of men from each village coming to invade them. So, like I said, over time, that's got to become part of their nature. Really, if you think about it. Thank you for this powerful wisdom. Thanks. Once thought marriage would complete me, but now I'm married, I think I'm finished. Yeah, that's obviously a famous saying or some kind of saying by somebody. Great insight and wisdom, all mentioned here. The question is, will they listen? Yep. So that is the question. And the thing is, people, I think that is a great sort of an angle to give you an idea of just why women are the way they are, and that you don't necessarily need to hate women, even though I say they can, be classed as evil in the way that they move, but it doesn't mean you need to hate them, because really you have to debate on whether is it intentional or is it primal. And I think sometimes the two can mix, but the primal side is always there. So it's just how they're programmed, and it's in them, it's in their DNA. And like I said, I believe men are made to love and women are made to be loved. And that's just how it is, it's like through nature's way of man protects a woman and woman needs a man to protect. So yeah, thought that was an interesting video, and I hope you got some clarity and understanding from that. And until the next time, take it easy. Peace.